I don't know about you, but I kind of think suffering is easy. There was a quote that I heard once that learning to live was actually a challenge in itself. And learning how to feel alive and to thrive is an act of resistance. And I think you're going to learn today what that actually means. It's not about understanding your resistance, but from a social justice aspect, thriving is an act of resistance. What does that mean? Today, I'm really excited to share with you a conversation that I had with a dear friend, Dr. Laurel Hicks. She is a PhD in the research faculty at the University of Colorado and an expert in women's mental health and intergenerational trauma. She combines both her academic and clinical experience with more holistic practices to co-create healing opportunities. In addition to publishing book chapters, peer-reviewed papers, and speaking internationally, Dr. Hicks connects with community through co-facilitation of women's circles. And at the heart of her work, believes that building community, reconnecting with the divine feminine, and sitting together in sisterhood provides deep and meaningful healing. Oh my goodness. There are a million things I could say about Laurel. I love her to pieces. And this is the beauty of following your heart, following your heart's desire. I met Laurel back in the day when she was a yoga teacher and really supporting women in pre and postnatal health. And she has just taken it from there. A wealth of information. But there's so many things that I jotted down from our conversation, but I wanted you to hear this conversation that I was having with Laurel because we were going back and forth on Voxer talking about thriving and social justice. And essentially I wanted to have a conversation with her because I'm like, Laurel, so many women believe that taking care of their needs is selfish. And as a therapist, can you please debunk this with me? And because our values and beliefs are very aligned, and what I love about what Laurel talks about is we can talk about our traumas, we can heal our traumas, we can go to the painful moments, but understand that choosing to thrive in your life is an act of social justice and literally creating a new paradigm for women. So of course it's going to be emotionally uncomfortable. Of course, we're going to have to make big moves. Of course, this is not going to be quote unquote easy. This is about owning who we want to be and how we want to feel and truly showing up and having emotionally uncomfortable conversations, holding emotionally uncomfortable boundaries, but choosing ourselves again and again because it's not just about us. So let's dive into the conversation with Laurel. I want you to head on over to Instagram, go find her at Sacred Moon Healers. That is SACRED, like Sacred Moon, MOON Healers, HEALERS. All right, Sacred Moon Healers. And of course, I want to know what you took away from this conversation as well. And I hope this just plants a tiny seed for you that when you don't want to do something, understand that it is an act of social justice and you are truly creating change, not just for those immediately around you, but people watching you as well. Hello, Miss Laurel. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Heather. I'm so happy to be talking with you today.
I feel like we go way back.
We go way, way back.
You knew me before I was Heather Chauvin. You knew me when I started mindfulness and meditation and teaching kids and questioning life.
I knew you before you were a mother.
Did you?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Did I? No, I didn't.
I may have had one at the time.
Maybe you had one baby.
Yeah, I probably had one baby, but that was forever ago. So you and I have connected, and I was like, what are we going to talk about? Because we have many, many things in common. You are just so wise, and there's many different ways that this conversation could go. But there was something that you said that really got me excited, which was about thriving and social justice. And I am all about, how do you want to feel? What do you want, right? But you and I both have a background in social work and therapy and that whole world where we, and we know we got to talk about the shit. But how do we sit with that duality of reaching for the life that we do want while also having those parts of ourselves that feel broken? And how does all of this play into a bigger movement? So, we're just easy questions today.
Yeah, we'll start with small talk, right?
Yeah. Who cares about the weather? Let's talk about small talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you said, like, how you just introduced that. Because when I was thinking, before we met today about thriving and what thriving really means to me, I was thinking that, thriving is when all parts of one's own self are feeling happy and well. And there's so many different layers, which I think is why I'm so just like passionate about working with people, is because there's so many different layers to it. And thriving, like when we can look at all of these different layers and think about, like, is my own inner child thriving? Is my own, like the mother archetype that lives within me, is she thriving? Is the wise woman inside of me, is she thriving? All of these different parts, like, are they all thriving? And what does it really feel like when that's true? Because so often maybe in part of our lives we're thriving, but in another part we're maybe not. Mm-hmm. And so when thinking about all of that and thinking about the holistic nature of that, that's where I start to get really excited. And I also start to get really excited when it's like, oh, wait, this like 8-year-old part of me is not exactly thriving. Because I am a therapist, I'm like, let's go there, right? Mm-hmm. Let's go and sit with her for a little bit and think about what maybe she has to say or has to heal. And when that part of me is healed, like, so much power and empowerment comes from that.
So we talked briefly we were going back and forth on Voxer about being fiercely compassionate and powerful. So I do see people swinging the pendulum of, like, how can we own who we want to be and how we want to feel while also having compassion for parts of our lives or people in it that maybe don't want us to own those parts of ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Such a good question. And the how, I think that varies a little bit from person to person. But from my own experience, that how really does come from doing some of that deep work within, right? The compassion is something that can be connected to just in practice, right? Like through meditation and compassion practices in general. But then I think there's also like a level of healing that comes on through a somatic sort of embodiment that allows, like for myself, it's allowed me to feel more compassion for myself and these parts of myself that maybe are harder to look at or harder to sit with. Right. And so when I've been able to, and all of this, I should say, like this healing is, for me anyways, done in relationship with another. And so when I can sit with another person and they can guide me or hold me or create space for me to move through all of this, then that's where a lot of the compassion, I think, comes through. And the reason why I think that's so important is because, when I think about, in my circles right now, there's a lot of talk about the divine feminine and the divine masculine and all of this. And I think about the ways that I consider someone to be really powerful. And often what comes into mind is a very masculine image, right? Or very masculine qualities. And so I have lately been playing with the idea of well, what does it feel like to be in this place of power and to be embracing my feminine qualities? And that's where the compassion, that fierce compassion, comes through. And a lot of that work, I think, goes back to looking at all those different parts of oneself and healing in relationship, not always in a silo.
So how do we heal and okay, so this is the number one question I get all the time. So I attract a lot of women who are listening to this podcast who want to grow. There's two things that happen. One, they want to grow. And when they start to grow, they notice the resistance from other people that they are in relationship with. So then sometimes it stops them from growing because fear, people pleaser, perfection, all of that stuff comes up, right? So how do we grow in relationship with other people? Of course, with ourselves too, but how do we grow in relationship with other people when their resistance comes up and it's that push-pull? Do you understand what I mean? Absolutely.
Well, there's often nothing that we can do about their resistance. So often other people are not going to change just because we want them to. So I do think it does come back to ourselves, but then finding other relationships in which can kind of hold that container in a way, so that the healing that I need to do in a relationship, I can work through that, but I don't do it on my own, right? I have people who are guides, healers, mentors, soul sisters that can hold me through that and kind of show me that sacred mirror in a sense, where it's okay, well, what are the parts within myself that I really need to look at? Because it's honestly, if you're familiar with Byron Katie's work, I think.
Yeah.
And she really brings a lot of it back to one's own self. It's yes, this person might be doing really horrible things, but then what is the mirror that's showing up for you? And that's really all that I can do. But I do think that, so part of my background is also in infant mental health, which is very much around the relationship and the dyadic relationship. And so much healing comes through in relationships in general. So even if that one relationship maybe has all this resistance, I do believe that there are other relationships that can also bring forth a lot of healing that then kind of naturally sort of translates into this relationship that has all this difficulty.
Right. So it's not just looking at the relationship itself, but looking at yourself and the mirroring of what that other person is triggering within you.
Absolutely.
To heal.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so let's talk about social justice.
Okay.
And the thriving piece of that. So now we understand we need to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many ways to do so. How is that a form of social justice?
Mm-hmm. A lot of the work that I've been doing within my own self has been, this healing work for myself, but part of it is also going into this, I guess, looking back into my ancestry. And what I've learned as I've kind of gone back into my ancestry is that, I'm a fourth generation settler in Canada. I'm a white woman. And when I think about oppression in these days, I think a lot about people who are newer to our country or have Black or brown skin. And so, and there's obviously so much oppression that happens, in that in general. And so when I look back and I kind of went back into my own history, I started going down this rabbit hole of patriarchy, right? And in all the ways that colonization not only happened here in North America, but it also happened in Europe. And a lot of that with some of the more patriarchal structures, like the church, for example, coming through, and like, for example, with people who were pagans, like telling them you can't be a pagan anymore, you can't celebrate this, you need to celebrate what we're doing. And it's very much like colonization. And so colonization has been happening for thousands of years, hundreds for sure anyways. And so when I think about kind of like reclaiming one's own power and being able to be a woman, right? Or a female identifying person, and standing up and being really, really solid in one's own power and having solid boundaries in not being small, right? And taking up space and letting go of that people pleaser. Like a lot of these patterns that so many women embody are really programmed from like generations of ancestors, that have been living this. And a lot of this is from this like very patriarchal structure. And so I almost see like being able to find ways where I can stand with like a real embodied presence, stand in my power, my authenticity, what feels true to me. Like these are all acts of resistance. And, I have a certain level of privilege just by where I live, the color of my skin, all of that, my education. Like, who am I not to do that? Right. To stand in that and to show a different way of leadership and power, and to show it for our young people that are coming up so that they can have like really strong, beautiful, compassionate leaders who are not just leading from a place that's very like masculine and patriarchal, but are leading from that place where creativity and flow and love and compassion come forth. Yes. Right. So like hell yeah. So I see a world where like for our generation, like we have to do this work and stand up so that our kids can do the same and in an even more embodied and powerful way.
I love that. Can you just define what an act of resistance is? Just for those who are listening, I talk a lot about emotional resistance, but that's not what this is. So can you define what that means when you say that?
Yeah. Well, one big act of resistance that was, that many people know about would be like, Rosa Parks saying that she's not going to go sit in the back of the bus, right? Like that would be an act of resistance. Like, no, I deserve to sit wherever I choose.
So taking a stand for what you believe.
Yeah.
Taking a stand for what you believe.
And, there's, I work for myself, but then I also work in academia, and in academia, there's a lot of people that have a lot of power over, right? And I also work in like healthcare in the birth world. Again, there's a lot of power over. And so finding ways to find one's own voice, to speak like clearly and powerfully in those moments that there would be a feeling of power over, right? That starts to dismantle the systems of oppression that exist in our world. And it's not easy to do for many people. And some people could be really hurt by trying it too, right? Like depending on where they live and what color their skin is or anything like that. And so I think of any of those small instances of resistance, like if you see something that's not going, that just doesn't seem morally right in the world, like actually standing and saying something about it, right? Saying, no, this isn't right. Sitting at like a family dinner and someone says something that's racist, for example, having the power within one's own self and that voice to say, actually, that's a racist thing to say. Mm-hmm. And we talk about it. So we can, like, maybe it could be a learning moment. Let's hope. So those are all those like smaller acts of resistance that can lead to bigger change.
Yeah. So resisting the system or systems at play. So like pushback, right? So taking a stand for what you believe in, not shrinking, not allowing, not shrinking your voice, not shrinking your power. And so I just want to go back to this moment where you said, as a white woman with privilege, it is, who am I not to thrive? I don't know specifically where in my journey I started to really believe that. But I realized, when you have influence and you can use your voice or you can give back, how I'm like, it's selfish not to, because you are giving opportunity to people around you. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because most of the time I'm hearing people talk about how guilty they feel for having too much, or how guilty they feel for having their privilege. And I'm like, if you use it for good, it is selfish not to.
Yeah. So I feel like this is a really difficult thing to explain, what you're trying to explain here. One of my colleagues, her name is Donna Mejia, she says, she uses this thing called fumble forward, when we're kind of like fumble through something that maybe we don't quite know how to explain, and like hold a bit of compassion for the person while they try and do it. Yeah. So I'm going to fumble forward with this one. And I think, all of us deserve to thrive. And how can I use my privilege in such a way that can help to disrupt these systems? Mm-hmm. And one way would be, one way I think about it, I talk with a lot of therapists, and sometimes they're really struggling with like what to charge. And, as a social worker, I definitely have like, I want to offer what I offer to everybody because I want everyone to have it. And like, I'd love to like not even charge anything for things. And like, when we think about, like charging money or earning money, receiving money, a lot of times people like kind of like women, especially, become really small in that and don't want to step into it.
Yeah.
And that in itself is this, again, sort of this like patriarchal view of that's like, well, who am I to charge that? And very rarely do we think of, male CEO of a company who's demanding X amount of dollars as saying like, oh, well, that's just selfish. Like, instead, we're like, wow, that person's really successful and look at what they've done for themselves. There's such a different way of thinking about it all. And so I really think about that, like, how can I rise and then like be in relationship with others to like support them in their rising?
Mm-hmm. You know what I think it is? Here's my perspective. This is like not cutting edge, but it's not cutting edge. It's forward thinking, and it hasn't completely solidified. So when I was interested in meditation and mindfulness for children, there was one book on the shelf. Now there are a million apps, and they talk about mindful-based stress reduction all the time. Mindfulness, it's cool, it's trendy. And I think this subtle shift for women to realize that boundaries I'm not even using the term self-care because I think that's very annoying, but like boundaries and honoring yourself, as you have said, is not selfish, right? And I think there's like these little tiny beliefs that have been planted and they still feel so fresh and new in this generational shift. One, because healing needs to occur, like a lot of frickin' healing needs to occur, but also the cultural shift of belief systems. And when you thrive, everyone wins. Mm-hmm. Like everyone benefits when you thrive.
Absolutely.
And we yet still somewhere in our being believe when I feel dead inside, everyone else wins. Mm-hmm. And so it's a complete paradigm shift. And I think that's why it's like the stumbling through, because we can't articulate it yet because it's just right there. And people are just starting to awaken to it. And yet it hasn't caught on yet that you giving more than you are receiving does not necessarily serve either you and the person that you're giving to. Like you both have a little less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you think about just like power in our society, a lot of that is really dictated by money. And so what if the really heartfelt advocates in the world had as much money as the people in the top 10 Forbes list of whatever? What if they had the money? Like, how different would our world be? And that's what I think of, like, when I think about the act of social justice, like that's an act of social justice. And like doing it in a way that like has that intention in mind. It's like, I am going to rise so that I can have millions of dollars in the bank, and maybe then I can support something where they're doing amazing work and that they're going to change the world. Yeah. Like then I can do that. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
And that is an act of resistance.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
That is an act of resistance. Yes. Yes.
How many acts of resistance? Well, not how many acts of resistance. You're going to be like, I don't fucking know, Heather. That's a lot of acts. Is there one in particular that comes to mind in your own life where you were like, this was not fun. It was emotionally uncomfortable. And I really had to take a stand for what I wanted, what I believed in. Am I making you emotionally uncomfortable?
I'm uncomfortable with the question. Yes. You heard my big, like, inhale and sigh. There's a few I can think of. They're all sort of in the work world for me. I've had two situations in the last, recent set of years where I've needed to stand up for myself to my like supervisor or something like that. And in one instance, it actually went really, really horrible. And it was like there was a lot of unkind, oppressive types of things that were going on around me. And I chose to stand up for that. And honestly, I was like persecuted for it, like in the workplace, and it became extremely uncomfortable and I ended up leaving. And then I realigned, right? Then I was like, this is not the place that where my voice can be heard, right? That would be that relationship where it's like, there's this resistance and I cannot get through it. It was just very painful. I realigned, I went into a new kind of place. And then when there were difficulties that came up, and actually I advocated for getting paid differently, because I felt like what I was getting paid was like what I was earning was less than what I deserved to be. And some of the tasks that I was given were like not the ones I wanted to be doing. And so I tried again. And this time I actually was heard, and I was heard really well. And part of it, like, not only is for me, but also the other people that I work with, right? It's like by me doing that and feeling like I'm in a place where I can say this, all the other people that I work around that maybe don't have a voice are that much closer to like feeling like they can stand up, or maybe not even needing to stand up, because then the people in charge are seeing things differently and they can make different choices to create more equality across the board. And so I've one situation that went well and one that went not so well.
Ah, the joys.
Yeah.
And that's where I always talk about imperfection. Like, you know, we have a tendency to want to do things perfectly, and you just got to show up for the messy middle, because that's where it happens. And having the opportunity to do so, because not everyone would have that opportunity. And we see that in the media, how even just with brands in general, I forget, there was one recently that I saw, and they're like, take that shit down. And everyone just went after it, and they had to take down their commercial. That would not have happened 10, 20 years ago. And so there is a subtle shift. Of course, there's the yin and the yang, and there's, everyone can have the shadow of everything. But Laurel, you and I could talk forever and ever about thriving and the importance of thriving and healing and all the things. I'm going to ask you one last question before I let you go. And you're like, oh shit, what is she going to ask me? What is your definition of thriving?
So I'm not really sure that it's a definition. I think it's a feeling. For me, it's something that's a feeling that I embody, where I feel grounded, I feel balanced, I feel inspired, I feel connected, I feel alive. And for me, I don't know if there's a real definition for it, but it would be something that, like, each day where I can kind of drop in and be like, am I feeling those things? Like, for me, that defines thriving. Am I feeling those things? And if not, it might be because I'm just like really tired and I need to rest. I don't know. And sometimes it's like, no, something's a little, misaligned right now. And so how can I get back to that feeling?
Yeah. Yeah. I think just having that as like the North Star, right? Like as the guide, rather than, oh, I feel like shit. That's just the way life's supposed to be. It's hard. It's like, yes. And how can we get back to that state of what feels good within ourselves? And again, through this conversation, that is the act of resistance. And you are worthy of feeling good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Laura, what are you up to these days? Where can people find more of you?
Actually, I just kind of started a business with a friend, a very dear friend of mine. We're called Sacred Moon, and we've started offering different workshops around this. And so we just finished one called the Wise Woman Activation. We're going to be doing another one here. I don't know exactly when, but it'll be soonish, coming up. That's all around abundance. And I think we're calling it Roots of Abundance. And yes, wealth is like a piece of that, but I almost think that, and I don't know what you think about this, but money being, when we focus on money, all these other things come up, right? That I am not worthy come up, that I don't deserve this, all of these different things. And so it's kind of like something that's activating to get at some of the other things that need to be healed. And so in that abundance conversation, we're really focused on thriving, but then also using different things from our therapy practice that EMDR and different somatic based work to help people really heal and then embody this new way of being. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We have a private Facebook group with that. And then I also have my private therapy clients and all of that. And I'm in Colorado now, so it's in Colorado. But
nice. And so the Instagram account, do you know it offhand if they're trying to find you
I think it's at Sacred Moon Healers.
Perfect.
I want to say. Yeah.
We'll put a link below in the show notes for everybody. But thank you, Laurel. I love you to pieces.
Oh, I love you too, Heather. It's so good to see you and talk with you today.
You too. 1,000 episodes. What started out as a place to feel less alone has turned into a global community. And I'd love to share this milestone with you because without you, there is no community. So I've decided to do a giveaway. In November, we're going to be celebrating 1,000 episodes of the podcast, which started out as Mom is in Control. And then at the beginning of this year was rebranded to Emotionally Uncomfortable. So all you have to do is go to heatherchauvin.com/1000. So Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/1000, like 1,000. And you're going to watch a little video of me. You can either do an audio reply or a text reply, or if you're brave, you can even do a video reply. And every single person who does a submission on how the podcast has impacted them will be entered into a draw. So we're going to be giving away some athletic greens. They're a sponsor of the show. I'm going to be giving away a pair of my favorite pajamas from Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth has been on Oprah's Favorite Things. I absolutely love these pajamas. And I'm also going to be giving away one of a basket that we've done previously with a collaboration with Jules Baskets. So you can check them out at JULES Baskets. And there's a Why Not You and a Drop the Guilt gift basket with a copy of my book. So all you have to do is go to heatherchauvin.com/1000, submit how the podcast has impacted you, and you will be entered into a giveaway. Thank you so much for being here. You have no idea what this means to me. And it's also a friendly reminder that if there's something inside of you that wants to be birthed, that wants to be said, go say it. There's somebody who needs to hear it from you.